You have $650 million. Your neighbor thinks you're an accountant who does okay. He's not wrong. He's just missing 8 zeros. Let me tell you exactly how this happens. Not the motivational version, not the highlight reel, the actual Tuesday afternoon version that nobody photographs and nobody posts about. It starts in a hospital break room at 2:47 in the afternoon. Not a boardroom, not a pitch competition. A break room with bad lighting and a vending machine that's jammed on the 3rd row. You're tired. Your shift just ended. You're standing there watching the little coil spin and stop, and the bag of chips just hang there, refusing to drop. And instead of banging the glass like everyone else does, you stop. You look at the machine differently. You think, who actually owns this thing? Most people would forget the question before they reach the parking lot. You went home and spent 40 minutes finding the answer. 40 minutes. That's all that separated you from everyone else who walked past that machine that week. Not intelligence, not capital, not connections. 40 minutes of actually bothering to look. What you found was a man named Gary, running 11 machines across 4 buildings, pulling in somewhere between $40 and $120 per machine per month after product costs and location fees. Not glamorous, not exciting. Gary is not on any Forbes list. Gary doesn't have a podcast. But you did the math, and the math did something to you. 1 machine in a decent location clears $80 a month net. 5 machines, $400. 10 machines, $800. 25 machines, right locations, run tight. You're looking at $1,200 to $3,000 a month coming in, whether you show up or not. The money wasn't the point yet. What got you was the structure underneath it. The machine doesn't need you. It just sits in a hallway, solving a small, boring problem for a rotating cast of strangers, and it pays you every single time they need it solved. No meetings, no performance reviews, no asking permission. You spent $900 on your first machine. Used, dented on the left side, placed it in the lobby of a mid-sized dental office on a revenue share handshake agreement. First month, $280 gross. After product costs, after the location cut, after driving out there twice to restock, you netted $190. $190. Your coworker made more than that in a single overtime shift. Your cousin got a signing bonus that would cover this machine for 4 years. Nobody congratulated you. Nobody knew. You sat with the number on a Thursday night, and you felt something that wasn't pride and wasn't disappointment, something quieter than both. You didn't quit because you weren't looking at $190. You were looking at what $190 proved. The architecture worked. You placed a second machine, then a third. And while you were restocking machines, you started watching laundromats the way a doctor looks at an X-ray. Not as a customer, but looking for the ownership layer underneath. Here's what you found. A small coin laundromat, 15 machines in a strip mall off a state route, generates anywhere from $60,000 to $200,000 a year in gross revenue. The ones that fail don't fail because nobody needs to wash clothes. They fail because of loose operations, not bad markets. People need clean clothes in recessions. They need them when the stock market crashes. They need them when everything else in their life is falling apart. The laundromat doesn't care about any of that. It just keeps running. Load after load, quarter after quarter. You bought your first one for $47,000, a working-class neighborhood in Ohio. Older machines, but functional. 6 years left on the lease. The previous owner, a retired postal worker named Dale, had managed it from a flip phone and a spiral notebook. The books were a mess, but underneath the mess, the cash flow was real. First year, it netted $38,000. You didn't celebrate. You used it as a down payment on the next one. This is the part nobody ever sees. Not the growth, not the compounding, not the portfolio building quietly over 8 years. Just a person doing math at a kitchen table at midnight. Just a Tuesday observation that became a Wednesday question that became a Thursday purchase that became something that doesn't have a clean name yet. 4 years in, your accountant Karen, 19 years in the business, unbothered by almost everything, sat across from you at a folding table in the back office of your third laundromat. You handed her a folder. She read it slowly, said nothing for a while. Then she looked up and said, "This is the most deliberately uninteresting portfolio I have ever seen." She meant it as a gentle criticism. You took it as the highest compliment of your professional life. Here's what was in that folder at the time. 4 coin laundromats across 2 Midwestern states. Combined gross revenue, $290,000 a year. Net after expenses, utilities, repairs, part-time help, approximately $110,000. Not spectacular, not podcast-worthy, but it arrived every month like rent, because it essentially was rent. 2 municipal parking lots you bought at county tax auctions on Tuesday mornings in government buildings where almost nobody else bothered to show up. Paid $31,000 for the first, $44,500 for the second. Together, they net just over $58,000 a year. You hired a part-time operator. You see a deposit every month. That is the full extent of your involvement. 3 highway billboards in Tennessee and Kentucky. You don't own the advertising. You own the land they sit on. Advertising companies lease that land on 5 to 15-year contracts with built-in annual escalations. Each one pays between $800 and $1,400 a month in ground rent. Some months you forget you own them entirely. And a commercial cleaning company you bought from a man named Frank, 68 years old, who had spent 31 years building something that ran mostly on its own momentum. 12 contracted clients. Annual revenue, just over $1.1 million. Thin margins, but reliable. The kind of business that loses clients slowly and replaces them slowly and never makes headlines. Karen asked if you were planning to pivot into something more growth-oriented. A tech play, multifamily real estate, something with real upside. You said no. She nodded like she expected that answer and didn't fully understand it. What she couldn't see was the logic underneath the boredom. Every single asset in that folder shares one characteristic. It serves a need that doesn't disappear. Not in a downturn, not when interest rates spike, not when some 24-year-old in Silicon Valley raises $40 million to disrupt an industry. People park their cars, people wash their clothes. Office buildings get dirty every single day, and someone has to clean them. Drivers on a highway see whatever is on that billboard, whether they want to or not. There is no app coming for any of this. There is no competitor who is going to out-innovate a parking lot. That is the point. The flashy guys, the ones raising venture rounds, posting portfolio updates on LinkedIn, talking about their vision at networking events. They're operating in markets where being interesting is the price of admission, where one bad quarter can unravel 3 years of work, where you're always one competitor, one trend shift, one news cycle away from becoming irrelevant. You are not in those markets. You are in the Tuesday morning markets, the ones nobody is watching, the ones that have been running quietly for decades and will keep running long after the interesting thing down the street has closed. Karen closes the folder, says the quarterly summary will be ready by Thursday. You thank her and drive home in your 2019 Honda Pilot. 91,000 miles. Crack in the rear bumper you've been meaning to fix for 8 months. You don't fix it. He drives a matte gray Range Rover with a custom wrap. You drive a 2019 Honda Pilot with a crack in the bumper. He spent the entire evening performing wealth. You spent 40 minutes, talked to 2 people worth talking to, and left at 8:15. On the way home, you spotted a busy coin car wash and made a mental note to find out who owns the property. Same night, completely different game. There's a guy at the networking event. You've seen his type before, but this one is polished. White t-shirt, the kind that costs $340. You know because someone mentioned the brand once, and you looked it up out of pure curiosity. Matte gray Range Rover out front with a custom wrap that probably ran another $4,000. He moves through the room like someone who has rehearsed it, just casually enough to look unrehearsed. He talks about his portfolio the way some people talk about their personality, loudly, confidently, in the general direction of whoever might be listening. He is not building wealth tonight. He is performing it, carefully, deliberately, at considerable ongoing expense. You're wearing a fleece from a sporting goods clearance rack. Your watch tells time and does nothing else. You drove here in the Pilot and parked it between a BMW and a Tesla without a single thought about how it looked. When he gets to you, because eventually he gets to everyone, he asks what you do. You tell him you own a few small businesses, laundromats mostly, some other stuff. You watch his face run the calculation in real time. The car, the fleece, the laundromats. His smile stays polite, but his body turns about 15 degrees towards someone else. In his head, you've already been sorted. Mid-level, comfortable maybe, regional, not worth the full pitch. Good. That quiet dismissal, that small, effortless moment of being underestimated, is worth more to you than anything else that will happen in this room tonight. Because the moment someone decides you're not worth watching, they stop watching. And the moment they stop watching, you can move however you want. This is what people fundamentally misunderstand about stealth wealth. They think it's about humility, some philosophical stance, the enlightened rich person at peace with their abundance, unbothered by status signaling. Maybe for some people it is. For you, it's a strategy. The ordinary life is armor, and you wear it every single day on purpose. Run the actual numbers on visible wealth, and the math gets ugly fast. The average new car transaction in the U.S. right now sits close to $48,000. Average monthly payment, around $735. You paid cash for the Pilot 4 years ago. Since then, your transportation cost has been gas and oil changes. Every dollar that isn't bleeding out through a car payment is sitting somewhere that compounds. That's not a philosophy. That's arithmetic. The house is the same logic. 3-bedroom colonial in a quiet suburb. Bought it 11 years ago. Mortgage paid off 2 years back. The neighbors think you're a small business owner who does all right. They're not wrong. They're just missing several zeros and don't know it. But here's what took longer to learn. The part that isn't just about money. Visibility is expensive in ways that have absolutely nothing to do with your balance sheet. The moment people know what you have, they stop relating to you and start relating to what you have. The temperature of every room changes. Conversations shift in ways that are subtle enough you almost can't catch them happening. Requests appear. A cousin you haven't spoken to in 3 years finds a reason to call. Someone at church mentions a business idea they've been sitting on. Your brother-in-law starts talking about a real estate deal that just needs a little seed capital to get moving. None of it is malicious. Most of it isn't even conscious. It's just what money does to the space around it the moment it becomes visible. It warps things. Quietly, consistently, permanently. So you keep the space clean. The fleece, the Pilot, the laundromats. The carefully maintained appearance of someone who is doing fine. Not exceptionally, just fine. It costs almost nothing to maintain. What it returns is something that no amount of money can actually purchase, the ability to move through your own life without being perceived as a target. At the networking event, the Range Rover guy is now deep in conversation with someone who has a startup. Animated, leaning in, doing what people do when they think a room is watching. You finish a glass of water, have 2 conversations you actually wanted to have, and leave at 8:15. On the way home, you pass a coin-operated car wash, busy for a Tuesday night. You make a mental note to find out who owns the property. The Pilot needs nothing. You drive it home anyway. Your best friend since college is named Marcus. 6 years of Sunday pickup basketball. He was at your mother's funeral. He's the kind of person who calls on a random Wednesday with no agenda, just calling. You don't have many friendships that feel like that, and you know exactly how rare it is. 3 months ago, Marcus called on a Wednesday. But this time, there was something underneath the conversation, a weight he was carrying carefully, trying not to sound like he was carrying it. He'd been building a food truck business for 2 years. Good food, real following, the kind of operation that gets a write-up in the local paper and has a genuine line at lunch. He'd found a brick-and-mortar location on a corner near downtown. The numbers made sense. The opportunity was real. The lease window was closing. He needed $85,000. You could have sent that money before the call ended from your phone, sitting in the parking lot of your third laundromat without feeling it, not even slightly. $85,000 against your current portfolio is roughly 11 days of passive cash flow. It is not a sacrifice. It is not even a real decision, financially speaking, but you didn't send it. You sat with the phone against your ear and listened and felt the full weight of knowing exactly what you could do and choosing not to do it. That specific feeling doesn't have a clean name. It isn't guilt. It isn't selfishness. It's something more complicated than both. The particular loneliness of understanding a situation more clearly than the person you love who is living inside it. Because here is what 11 years taught you, slowly and at real cost. Money handed to someone who isn't structurally ready for it doesn't solve the problem. It accelerates whatever is already there. If the operations are loose, capital makes them looser. If the owner doesn't yet understand the difference between revenue and margin, if they haven't learned to read a lease for the clauses that will quietly strangle them in month 19, then outside money just buys them a faster, more expensive version of the exact lesson they were already heading toward. And then the money is gone. And too often, so is something in the friendship. You've seen it happen. Not with Marcus, but you've seen it. So instead of sending the money, you asked if you could come by Saturday morning. You sat at his kitchen table with a notepad and went through his numbers for 3 hours, found 2 line items in his operating costs that were quietly bleeding him, small enough that he'd normalized them, large enough that they mattered. Asked him about the lease terms on the new space, the rent escalation clauses, the personal guarantee. What happens in month 18 if foot traffic runs 30% below projection? He didn't know the answers to some of those questions, not because he wasn't smart, because nobody had ever sat down and asked them with him before. You came back the following Saturday, and the one after that. By the 4th Saturday, Marcus had renegotiated 2 vendor contracts, found an SBA loan program he qualified for, and restructured his expansion timeline in a way that didn't require outside capital at all. $60,000 through the SBA program and a small business grant through the city. He signed the lease 6 weeks later. He called the night he got the keys, was crying a little, the way people do, when something they genuinely worked for actually arrives. He said he couldn't have done it without you. You didn't tell him what you could have written the check for. You will probably never tell him. That's not modesty. It's just understanding what the story needed to be. His story, built by his decisions, owned by him in a way that no check from you could have ever made possible. The email arrives on a Thursday at 7:12 a.m. You're in the plumbing aisle of a Home Depot, holding a bottle of drain cleaner, trying to remember whether the utility sink at the Ohio laundromat has PVC or galvanized pipe, because it matters which product you use. The notification is from Karen. Subject line, Q2 Portfolio Summary. Final. You almost pocket the phone. Something in the preview number stops you. You put the drain cleaner on the shelf, open the email. Read the summary line twice, slowly. The way you read something when you're not entirely sure you're reading it correctly. Total verified net worth, including all real property, business equity, liquid holdings, and portfolio assets. $650 million. You stand there under fluorescent lights. A forklift somewhere in the back of the store is reversing, making that slow, beeping sound. A man in a gray hoodie 2 feet away is comparing prices on copper fittings. Nobody is looking at you. Nobody knows. The store doesn't know. The forklift doesn't know. The number exists in an email on a phone, in a hand attached to a person holding drain cleaner, trying to remember what kind of pipe is under a utility sink in Ohio. You thought it would feel different. You had imagined the way everyone imagines a milestone, some shift in the air, a physical sensation, a before and after with a seam you could actually feel between them. There is no seam. There is just the plumbing aisle and Karen's email and the quiet hum of a life that has not changed because a number changed. You reply with 3 words. Thanks. Looks right. You pick the drain cleaner back up, photograph the label to send the property manager, and walk to checkout. You pay $8.47. Don't use a rewards card because you can never remember if you have one. In the car, you sit for 1 minute before starting the engine. 11 years ago, you netted $190 from a used vending machine in a dental office lobby. Sat with that number on a Thursday night, not knowing what to call what you were feeling. It wasn't pride, and it wasn't disappointment. It wasn't enough to tell anyone about. This is the same feeling, exactly the same, just with more zeros behind it. And that's not nothing. That might actually be everything, because it means the feeling was never about the number. It was about the architecture, the proof of concept, the quiet satisfaction of a system running exactly the way you built it to run, without drama, without applause, without anyone in a Home Depot plumbing aisle having any idea. You start the engine. The laundromat drain isn't going to fix itself. Same road, same pilot, same crack in the bumper. Nothing about the outside of your life has changed in the last 40 minutes. Nothing will change tomorrow either. But somewhere this week, you're going to watch someone spend real money trying to look like they have it. And you're going to notice something you couldn't have articulated 11 years ago, that the performance of wealth and the actual architecture of it are almost never found in the same person at the same time. The knowing doesn't make Tuesday easier, but it does make you ask the question that actually matters. What are you building? And is it yours? Or is it just something that looks good when people are watching?